So what do you do when you have what you at least think is a good idea, which is I have several images that I took at the same time of this model, Christine, and I want to combine them together. I have one more image here that I want to bring in here, but the problem is there's really nowhere to put it. Let's move this back out of the way for a minute. So I want to put her in here, but there's really no room. So I need to basically extend the photograph. So there's a couple of steps to this. The first one is going to the canvas size command. I'm going to lock down the left-hand side, and I want to add a bit of space to the right-hand side. This gives me some room to work on. Now, I need to try and extend the photograph itself. Now, let's agree on one thing here, and that is that not every photo would be this easy. This one happens to be pretty easy because it's a pretty basic wall with some grass and the road and so on. And the other thing that's important to note is there's actually some room for me to do this, because you got to have a little bit of space to actually select something. So I'm going to select just this little piece. I'm going to feather it just a hair, just a little, actually 2 pixels is probably fine. And I'm going to press Command or Control J to duplicate it, put it up on its own layer. Now if I press V for the move tool, I can start to move this over. If I go a little too far, I can then use my arrow keys to kind of nudge it back into place. And it doesn't look too bad, except when you see this kind of thing, the decision you'll have to make is either leave it this way, but then you can start to kind of see almost like a reflection of this little shadow. So the other option, if I do free transform, Command or Control T, and then right or Control click on it, I can choose flip horizontal. Now that's going to make the edges kind of match up better, but now there's a problem down here where the line of the grass, it's kind of sloping down, and now it's not. So what I might do while it's still in free transform is to go back in here and choose skew, and then click right on the center point and just pull it down just a little bit to try and make it match up, and then hit enter. Now chances are that means the top is going to miss a little bit, but we can fix that in a moment. Now that I've got that first piece looking pretty good, I'm going to hold down the Option or Alt key and drag another one just to make a copy, and then again use my arrow keys to kind of nudge it into place, something like this. Now, as you can start to see already, there will definitely be some repetition, and that's okay because we're going to deal with that. The other thing to remember is I'm bringing in a pretty big photo that's probably going to cover up quite a bit of this, including this grass down at the bottom. So I'm not going to be terribly concerned if it doesn't match up perfectly, because there's a couple things we can do. First of all, we can clone over some of it to make it match up a little better, but as we mentioned, chances are some of it's going to be replaced anyway. So let's just actually do one more just for the heck of it. Try and get it kind of somewhat the way we want to look. And now here in my layers palette, I have a bunch of layers that are all the ones I've copied. So this top one is selected. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, click on this one, then press Command Control E for Merge Visible. So now I have a layer that's not looking great, but at least it's a start. Now, again, because I know much of this is going to be covered up, I can kind of ignore some of this stuff, but if you needed to, this is where you could use the Clone Stamp tool. And, oops, that's a little bit too big. I'm using the bracket keys to change it. And anywhere like in here where you see definitely a noticeable line, you know, you could work on that a little bit to kind of fix that up. Same thing in here. I'd use a bigger Clone Stamp tool, change the opacity down a little bit, and then pick a good spot up here, and then just kind of click a few times just to try and randomize this so it doesn't look quite as obvious that there's a pattern. Oops, not that one though. Now I want to do the same up at the very top to kind of fill in the gaps here and make it kind of match in a little bit, something like that. Now I'm going to eventually trim this part out here. In fact, let's do that right now. Just go back to the image menu and choose trim, and let's base it on the bottom right pixel. That will just get rid of, actually in this case, nothing apparently. Let's try that again. Trim, bottom right pixel. I guess it's seeing something in there, so we'll just have to do it manually and crop it. Usually it will just trim itself. In this case, it's decided apparently it's seeing something there that won't let me, so let me just pull this in here and crop that. Okay, so now that we've done all that work, we can bring in our other photograph. Let me zoom down a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to make a very rough selection, something like this. I'm not going to worry too much about it being a really accurate selection because it's the same wall in the background, so it won't be too hard to get it to match in. I'll drag and drop that over, and then basically position that. I need to put it up where I can see it. She's a little big, so we're going to do free transform and just scale down something like this, so it looks like hopefully she's kind of in the foreground looking at herself. Who's looking at herself? Who's, yes, looking at herself. You get the idea. And then all I would need to do, obviously down here, I would need to do a little bit of fix up. I'll just do this really quickly because I'm running short of time here. But I would basically just make a selection to get rid of this part in here. Something like that. And basically now, if necessary, all I have to do is go back to this extra layer and just fix up that little part that I did. Now, as I mentioned right off the top, this doesn't work on every photo, but with a bit of effort, you can see it doesn't look too bad. It just needs a bit more fixing up, but it's just a way that you can extend your actual image a little bit to give yourself a little bit more room. So, with a bit more room, you can make multiple collages and even sneak yourself into a photo wherever you need to be. Hope that helps. Dave Cross. I will see you next time.